And welcome in, everybody, to Sportsbook Confessions time for some reflections from my good friend Jeffrey Dawson at EC Sports Invest. I'm Brady Tinker at DFW Sports Beat. Let's talk a little bit about what happened in the NFL and what unfortunately happened in the NCAA championship game and a few other things. Jeff and I will take you through some entertaining opportunities coming up this weekend in the NFL. What are they calling it? Super Wild Card Weekend? Is that what they're calling it? Why is it super, by the way, Jeff?
Maybe because it's on Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I don't know why it would be
I
super.
thought maybe they'd notified you about the change in Super Wild Card Weekend. I haven't gotten anything yet either, but I'm sure it's going to be super. I'm happy that it's Saturday and Sunday. So let's get to it. Poor TCU, Jeff. Um, my Horned Frogs had a phenomenal year. It was a fantastic season all the way around. The one blemish was the Big 12 championship against a game Kansas State team. They had beaten 5 or 6 or 7 ranked teams throughout the season. Each week 3, week 5, week 8, they're due to lose. They can't keep playing these close games. They can't keep finding ways to win. And damn it if they didn't. And if they didn't show up just bigger than shit against Michigan in the semifinal and really win an exciting game, which really led me to believe 14 points is too many. If they can survive the first 8 minutes, they've got a chance to hang in. But there was something on my shoulder saying, Georgia played as poorly as they can play. And that a-hole of a head coach who is so brilliant bailed them out. I didn't remember seeing a college game in a long time where I felt like the coach actually made his team survive. And I thought that in the game against Ohio State. Ohio State, I thought, won that game 5 times. And I personally thought Kirby Smart just literally kept bailing them out left and right. The key timeout when they were running up on a fake punt that was going to work and nobody saw it. And he's out on the field. He sees it immediately. I mean, I think he's brilliant. I think he could go to the next level. I don't know how he'd do with young people coming in. He seems a bit abrasive and his arrogance level is off the charts. But so are his smarts. And Georgia literally was so prepared for this game. I think the almost against Ohio State really, really allowed. Bill Parcells used to tell us, I can teach a lot more and I can yell and I can point fingers and I can do everything when we win. And it really resonates better for the next week. So they survive Ohio State and they were so ready for TCU. It was spooky and overwhelming. And everybody who says SEC only is probably right.
Not to be a Tuesday morning quarterback, but if you just take a step back, and the way I break this down very simply is Ohio State was given a second chance, a second lease on life
Mm-hmm.
when they were invited to the Final Four,
Yep.
and they played their asses off. People say if Marvin Harrison didn't leave the game, they probably would have won that game.
And
It was a
maybe. Yeah.
it was a great chess match because Georgia likes to play tight one-on-one coverage on the wide receivers. They hadn't seen a Marvin Harrison. They hadn't seen speed like this. I know the SEC is great. Don't get me wrong, guys. I know it's chock full of athletes, but I'm just saying Ohio State was the perfect matchup uh, for them to play. Now, Ohio State with the missed field goal now gives Georgia a second lease
Yeah,
on life
absolutely.
to get to the championship. As you said, their defense, as bad as everyone thinks it played, is as good as Ohio State played. I'm going to tell you right now, I watched a million games this year, and I've seen quarterbacks up and down. We talked about Hooker from Tennessee. CJ Stroud in the semifinal game never once phased. Cool as Cuba. I don't think he broke a sweat. And TCU, the huge win against Michigan, and now 13 and a half point dogs. You're right. You need to win the first quarter or stay close. It was 10-7.
Yep.
And next
And when
thing you
they
know,
scored, I thought, okay, I don't think they're going to win, but I can see a nice little 45-35. TCU does themselves proud. And it felt like a tidal wave after tidal wave kept coming, that he had his Georgia players so ready that they all believed when they stepped on the field, everything that he told them was going to work, and it did. They ran the seams beautifully. They got to the edges. It was as if all the things that the broadcaster said might be weaknesses that Georgia might try and take care of, because they had conversations with coaches in the last week about this, all came to fruition. Everything that Kirby Smart gave them a little taste of, we think this or this, just came flying out of Georgia. I mean, they were seamless. They were beautiful. Their pace seemed to bother TCU. I just felt like they were so terribly well coached, and then they played just the game of their lives after probably getting a little bit lucky in the semifinal.
100%, 100%. And I go back to July. I talked about this morning on our morning breakfast bankroll show, and I was sitting in the Circa in July and putting together that 3-team champions parlay with the Astros, with the Bills. And I was sitting there with a good friend, a colleague of ours, Julian Edlow from DraftKings, and we said 2 names. We said Alabama and Ohio State. No disrespect to Georgia, they just lost 15 guys to the NFL. Right. 10 in the first round. And I know Kirby, and listen, we don't rebuild, we reload. I get that part of it. I never, ever saw this coming. Undefeated season, back-to-back, and they are now on DraftKings, the current favorite to three-peat in 2023.
Well, and Kirby's out there holding 3 fingers up, promising it's going to happen. So that's some pressure, and that's some balls, and I appreciate it. They were outstanding. And Saban may have given us a clue in all the pregame too, when everybody was joking around and Corso went with the TCU hat, and somebody said, let's hope it's a good game. And you could hear Saban say, maybe it will be. I don't know how, and I thought, oh boy, he's as arrogant as he is, he knows,
And the thing is, we gave out the team total of Georgia 38.5 over. They get there on the first possession in the second half, but Saban said it right. He goes, if you're backing TCU, they somehow got to score 40 points, and that was not Ohio State's offense right there. So it was going to be tough to keep up with them.
Yeah, it was. It was still a great season. Everybody here in Texas should be proud of their Horned Frogs. The immediate thought I had this morning was, 2-loss Alabama, which I predicted. Now, as we head to the beginning of next year, there's a really good chance 2-loss SEC team gets that invite, probably this year, not ahead of TCU the way things worked out, but probably ahead of Ohio State, right, as things worked out, right? Do everybody go back and say, well, we knew it, everybody knew it, we were all right, and if in doubt, you take the SEC team.
And the sad thing is, none of us didn't say before the Final Four Alabama wasn't the best, one of the top 4 teams in the country. We all knew that.
Yes.
But who were they going to replace? And the best game out of the Final Four was Ohio State and Georgia.
Yeah.
And TCU got the upset in the other semifinals. So as much as everyone wants to bash the committee, they did get it right.
They got it right. They got it right. They played by the rules. They did what most of us wanted to. You want to see an outlier team. The underdog is a good story, and they weren't gifted in. They did everything they had to do. Everything lined up date wise and win and loss wise, and they did what they had to do. And then great win against Michigan too. So I think tip my hat to all of it. All of it was great. I'm sorry it ended up 65-7. As we move to the NFL. Let's recap a little bit for some reflections. What happened in week number 18 for the NFL, and give a dose of what we think might happen this weekend. But we'll be back for everybody Thursday night, so we'll be really right on these games on Thursday night. So I'm going to, Jeff, if you don't mind, I set this up, so I'm going to go through a little bit of what happened in week 18 that may lead us to think certain things. A lot of it was kind of asked backwards, but the Ravens and Bengals played, and that's the first one I wrote down. 27-16, the Bengals win. I watched most of the game because I wanted to see if I still eyeball test thought the Bengals were the hottest team in the AFC. I do. They came out very early in that game. They got some defensive help. The offense sputtered a little bit towards the end. The Ravens really are an elite defense again now by the end of the season, but offense is going to be tough. That was the third-string quarterback for the Ravens. It looks like the second-string quarterback probably plays, right? I'm not really hearing anything different than that. Are you?
Well, I'm going to go back to the 9 number and the close at around 10 or 11 Cincinnati. the line was 6.5, now 7. My initial thought, honestly, was that was a Lamar number,
Yeah.
that Lamar was going to play. Now, the problem is he hasn't practiced since December 4th. Now, we
Right.
talked
And
about,
we're, since we're doing this live on Tuesday night, we don't know because he probably wouldn't have done anything other than been in the building today. So Wednesday will give us an outlook. Thursday, before we get here for you Friday night, we will know if Lamar has participated in these 2 practices, and we'll have a better idea. They're playing again. I mean, it's too bad that literally this is the way it's happening, that they're playing again. So for the 3rd time this season, these 2 teams will line up. They split the first 2 games, and we don't really know about Lamar. So, yeah, watch the line, right? That's what you're telling everybody now is
yes,
Vegas will give you the indication tomorrow if Lamar's on the practice field. Probably that line will come down a little bit more. But Cincinnati's still pretty darn hot. We talk all the time about how the best teams – and even the teams that are really good teams that think they have a chance to do the New York Giant thing, if you will, that they did a couple of times against Tom Brady, where they kind of were middle of the road, but you knew they were physical during the regular season and then closed with a flourish, had to play in week 17, et cetera, and just carried it right on through. And it happened twice. No way to explain Eli Manning winning 2 championships anyway other than that. So all teams are looking for that sort of momentum. I wanted it for the Cowboys. I wanted it for the Chiefs. I wanted to see the Bengals keep it, et cetera, et cetera. But it's very difficult. This season's gotten even longer. They don't tackle all the way back to mini camps hardly. They don't tackle hardly in the preseason. The season's really elongated, and it just seems like so many injuries. From like a Cowboys perspective, Dak's hurt in week 1. The backup carries them through. They go through this. We can't do this. Oh my gosh, we did this. And then through week 8 or 9, they're the best defense or the top 2 or 3 defense in the NFL. And all of a sudden you get injuries and they're not anymore. I mean, these seasons are so long. So for fans to sit at home for any of these teams that are in or that weren't in and say, well, we're never going to do it because we don't have the momentum we wanted. This thing just doesn't work out just like you want it to very often.
No, I mean, if you were to say today, tomorrow, even Saturday, who's the 2 hottest teams in the NFL? I think most would say Cincinnati and most would say the 49ers.
Right. That's what I said on the show this morning.
Yeah. And as much as I want to say, I mean, Cincinnati's got to go through Kansas City and Buffalo. Those guys are going to match up. So in my eyes, it's coin flips over there. And as much as I want to say San Fran because of the defense, because they're healthy, no one's seen Brock Purdy take a snap in the playoffs. What's he going to do on the road? I'm waiting for that hiccup, and it could be 3 weeks from now in Philadelphia if Philadelphia wins their first game.
Good idea. So we will get back to you with more information on this Ravens-Bengals game on Thursday because we want to know, as you do, the status of Lamar. Their running game seems to be getting better. They've got at least a 2-headed monster, maybe 3. Their defense has risen even probably above where we thought it would get to through week 7 or 8. The Ravens are back to being an elite defense. So however that game matches up, that's going to be, I'll just look at it right now and say, I'm going to say that's going to be an easy under, and I might be wrong. The Bengals might get hot. But what's that game sit at now, Jeff? Is it 41 or 2?
Yeah, I had my initial numbers on our spreadsheet was 6.5 with a 43.5. Brady, they're talking your number here down to 42 and a 7.
Yep.
So again, I think the under goes with Baltimore, even though no one talks about the Cincinnati D. They have not given up over 17 points in forever.
Yep.
So again, this could be first 1 to 23 wins, Brady.
There's something about Cincinnati too. We never talked about their defense last year, even as they matriculated their way through the playoffs, but they showed up big in the second half of the AFC Championship game. They played pretty damn well in the Super Bowl. And while we don't identify them, I think because they have so much talent on offense, they're well coached and they have confidence. And they were here last year and they easily could have won that Super Bowl. So there's a lot going for Cincinnati, but it could flip. I'll tell you what. If that quarterback for the Ravens gets in there, they can win that damn game. Let's move on to the Vikings at the Bears. Now, this is playing back to week 18 a little bit, and the point sort of was the Vikings finished off a 13-win season. Pretty damn good. You had Kirk Cousins as an MVP candidate. That went, that had legs through maybe 8 or 10 weeks. The problem isn't necessarily Kirk either. It's that when you look up, the Giants have won 13 games. Way to go. That's a lot of damn wins in the NFL. They are -1 in the plus-minus ratio. So they've got 13 wins somehow because they haven't scored more points throughout this 18-week season than the teams that they played. So contrast that with the Bills, who are roughly plus 130, Chiefs, who are plus 115 or whatever. I'm off the top of my head. That's a massive difference. So I look at a Vikings team and I think, well, they could lose to anybody. And the Giants and the big blue wrecking crew thing, they got a little bit going, right? And a little bit of a hot quarterback. It will not shock me, and we'll get to this more Thursday, but it will not shock me if the number 6 seeded Giants win at the number 3 seeded Vikings. Would it you?
That's the talk of social media. That is the sexy, I hate to say it this way, public trendy dog right now is the Giants. But if I told you this, there were 6 games counting Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Right.
Would you believe that the Giants and Vikings with a 48.5 is the highest over under of the whole weekend?
Yeah, that surprises me. I guess people think if the Giants are going to win, that they're going to have to score a fair amount of points because the Vikings are. I'm not certain of that. The Vikings offense hasn't been sterling the last 3 or 4 weeks. Certainly, you name the names and you're like, whoop, yep, they go for 40 whenever they want to. But the Giants defense is playing good. This Giants team is eerily similar, 9-7-1. Much more leaning on the defense, but very quietly, their above average quarterback has gotten better, and Dable's got a hold of them, and you can sense something coming out of the Meadowlands. Maybe I like it because it's just good for football when New York teams are good. But there is something there. Yes, the fact that they are the highest over and under game of the week says to me Kansas City must not be playing. I'm not sure what else it says.
No, you're spot on. No Kansas City, no Philly. So,
yeah.
I mean, you got some decent matchups here. But when I'm looking at my spreadsheet, I was in awe. You know, the Jacksonville's at 47.5, Miami, Buffalo, 47.5, 46. The Ravens at Cincy, 42. And even Monday night, the Cowboys in Tampa, 45.5. So when I'm seeing a 48.5, and it looks like it might even tiptoe to 49, I'm like shaking my head. I'm like, who is it? Phil Simms? Is it Eli Manning? Is it Amane Tuma? Well, it's not a Tuma.
Yeah. That's going to be good stuff. I'm interested to watch that game because that's a game that could go several different directions, it seems to me. It really could. The Patriots at the Bills, 35-23. The Bills win, probably feel marginally screwed that they don't have a chance to win the number 1 seed the way things worked out. Cincinnati, certainly their coach says we got screwed the most, which they may have. And his point is we were going to win that game when their young man had that tragic heart issue. And then we would have had the opportunity to get in. But now, as you look at it, the Chiefs weren't going to lose to Oakland. So Cincinnati wouldn't have gotten in. So the team really that lucked out probably might be the Bills. I don't know. The neutral field thing throws me off if they get to Kansas City and the Bills. That seems odd. I guess we don't know where that's going to be yet. It'd be funny. I mean, you would almost think you'd like them to choose an outdoor cold stadium because they both play in cold outdoor stadiums. I'm not sure where that would be. You want to throw a guess out if it's Buffalo, Kansas City, an AFC Championship game? Exactly what town might that be in?
Buffalo and Kansas City. You want something cold? I mean, why not play it in Chicago or something?
Okay,
play it in. But they'll probably end up in a dome somewhere in Detroit.
In Detroit, that's what I'm thinking. Yep. Yep. So the Bills season or the Patriots season ended with a little bit of a splat the last few weeks. I sort of wanted Mac Brown to be the guy, and you gave me some cross-eyed looks the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I think you were probably right. The Bills end up having a really good season, 13-3. The Patriots hung around. Josh Allen ends up an MVP candidate with 35 touchdowns and 14 picks, but they don't seem really past about week 5 offensively to be the team that I think we thought that they were going to be. If you go back through the Bills games and look at statistics, Josh's statistics were pretty damn good, lots of 400-yard games, and yet they didn't score a lot of points. They struggled in the red zone mightily, I guess because of the running game and because Josh threw too many interceptions in the red zone. Mm-hmm. But I don't fear the Bills, especially at a neutral field for Cincinnati or Kansas City, like I did in week 3 when I was listening to the build-up, I guess.
No, in August we talked about Bills AFC champs, Super Bowl champs, because I could see them with the number 1 seed. I could see someone trying to come in after the bye week in the snow, the bare chested, the breaking of the tables. That's what Buffalo needed. Now, I'm waiting for the rally cry tomorrow. It sounds like in 24 to 48 hours is going to be released from the hospital. So maybe him on the stands or up in a box somewhere. There's going to be that rally cry. Now, listen, when you put Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, and you put Joe Burrow all together, it doesn't matter if it was in a parking lot, if it was in Mars. We're waiting for that one upset this weekend that's going to shake this thing up. And until then, you again just draw strings. If you had 3 people, you had $1,000 in the middle, and I chose last. Whatever you gave me, I'd be happy with. So I think all 3 of them are that close. I really am. And the one thing Cincinnati has that the other 2 don't is that old line with the ground game, with a Mixon, with the Pirine that can move the sticks. They don't need to go to trickery like Kansas City or Buffalo have to go to.
Agreed with that. And Kansas City certainly remembers that because Pirine just would not fall down at the end of that game 4 or 5 weeks ago. So I can't see, as I look at this on Tuesday, that the 7th seed Miami, and we'll get into this more on Thursday, has a huge puncher's chance at Buffalo without Tua Tagovailoa, and I'm not even sure Bridgewater plays. So not knowing who their quarterback is going to be, they seem to have lost quite a bit of momentum there. Now I understand they've lost one of their starting running backs to a broken hand. So Miami just doesn't seem to have really anything going for it other than, I think, a fun young coach who's going to do a good job coaching them up and getting them ready. But as we sit here on Tuesday, what are the numbers and what is your first blush for giving people some thoughts for the weekend in Miami at Buffalo?
I had a 10 minus 115, meaning the next move will go to 10.5.
Yeah.
With a 44.5, the total is shot to 46.5. I was seeing 10s, Brady. It's down to 9.5. It's even 9 at the Circa right now, which to me, when I saw the flat 10s, that meant no Tua, no chance, no Tua. Right. Now, if this line starts dropping to 8.5, 8, maybe even a 7.5, to me, that means Tua. But right now, I'd be shocked.
Me too.
If I saw any Tua. I don't want to see Tua. You don't want to see Tua.
No.
We know that. I would call Dan Marino in and see if he's got 60 minutes left in the arm.
Sure,
I don't think whoever's QB and has a shot in Buffalo in the first week of the playoffs.
And don't get us wrong. If you haven't watched us in a while, we are huge Tua fans. It's the reason we don't want him to play. We've both raised kids. We both, we can't imagine what the Hamlin family went through, and we can't imagine what Tua's parents are thinking with all of those concussions. I mean, that's their son. His life is going to be something much greater than the NFL. So, yes, I would like to see him if he's back next year and everyone can clear him. And he still, doesn't he, just on a side note, doesn't he have to be a concussion or 2 away from retiring?
100%.
If you're, I mean, again, as fathers, doesn't he have to be a concussion or 2, especially a bad one where he bounces off away from retiring?
Brady, this reminds me of a boxer that just got knocked out not once, not twice, but 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
And he's at such a young age that, as you said, there is so much more ahead of his life. If he picked up the phone and called Nick, Nick would find a job for him. If he turned around to the Miami staff and says, hey, I want to work as a QB coach this year. Let's see what it looks like next year. That's what I'm hoping for. But there's no need to rush back, especially this year. Let's at least wait till the summertime, more tests, more results, and then we can move on from there.
Agree with that. And while we're doing this live, I'm going to pull this up in a second. I'll give you some numbers on his contract, because the truth is, you also think about taking care of your family, whatever. I promise you, I'll get this number. He's already got enough money guaranteed that his life will be wonderfully stable financially, as long as he doesn't make terrible mistakes or just go down the road throwing his money out the window in $1,000 bills. But I'll pull that up in just a second. Let's move on to the Falcons at the Bucks. And again, this one maybe worked out as good as any in that Tom started this game, played pretty well in the first quarter and a half. His team got a lead. I mean, Vegas was all over this. His team got a lead, but the Vegas had them Falcons -4 or something like that because they felt like what was going to happen happened, and that was even if the Bucs got out early, the Falcons really want to win this game no matter what. And as the Bucs begin to pull their regulars, this thing would probably flip. And it did. 17-7 Bucs at half. Tom was pretty good, 84 yards and a touchdown. They looked relatively efficient, which they haven't really much this year. And they end up winning 2 of their last 3, and that includes this loss to the Falcons. So maybe the Bucs got some momentum going a little with what seems like 3 straight wins, even though it wasn't, right? You feel like if Tom stays in and they try to win, they win that game against Atlanta in week 18.
You know, when Tom came to Tampa and they had that glorious run, 1 game over 500, they had the bye. They win their last 5 games. They go to Washington, they win. They go to New Orleans and win. And then they shock Rodgers and win that game in Green Bay. And then come home in Tampa and face the Chiefs with no O-line. And that game was over almost as quickly, it seemed, as the TCU Georgia game. I felt for Pat that game. I mean,
one of the poorest officiated Super Bowls in the history of the league, too. Really was
no doubt. They knew who they wanted to win that game.
It was
trust me.
Yeah.
But watching this team and just it just looks so forced. I mean, I know Mike Evans a couple weeks ago, 3 touchdowns, a couple 100 yards. It was amazing. It's the first time all year those two really looked like they used to look. Tom is not Tom of 5, 10, 8 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
The whole wide world is on Tampa Bay on Monday night. And I will tell you this on Thursday night, the buck stops here. I'll just leave it right there.
All right. I'll be anxious to hear that because I was going to get to that. We will tease a little that the number 5 Dallas Cowboys, limping a bit to the line, will be at the number 4 Bucs for the Sunday night game. Lots of intrigue. The Bucs smashed them 19-3 in the opener. Wasn't because Dak got hurt. He got hurt very late in that game. The Cowboys were no match for them. And the Cowboys came a long way through a topsy-turvy season to end up playing the Bucs again in Tampa. Feels like, to Cowboys fans especially, a bad draw because Tom is 7-0 all-time playing the Cowboys. They've never beat him, no matter what team he's on, no matter where they're at, grass, indoors, outdoors, doesn't make any difference. Tom always wins against the Buccaneers. So that's the first thing. 26 years of futility is the way it feels for long-suffering Cowboys fans who felt entitled after 92, 93, and 95, and they learned that they weren't. But this will be interesting. The Cowboys game was a strange game, and we'll get to that as well, because they had this outside chance, and I really felt like watching them closely from here in Dallas, it was a terrible break that the Eagles didn't beat the Cowboys in week 16 or win in week 17. So the Cowboys could have done what needed to be done, and that is Micah Parsons needs a rest. Even at 23 or 24 years old, Tank Lawrence needs a rest. Zeke needs a rest. A lot of this team is overwrought and tired. They've got holes now at cornerback. They've got issues where they're having to jumble the offensive line around. And it really would have served the Cowboys well, I believe, to have been able to take at least a week and a half off or a game and a half off. Instead, I mean, you go into the final week and you're playing the same time the Eagles are playing, the same time the Niners are playing. And if the world ends up on its ass, you can be the number 1 seed or the number 2 seed, and you certainly want that. So you're playing everybody. But if you watch the game, they ran a vanilla offense out there that looked like they were almost trying to lose. Well, if you really, I didn't get it. And I really enjoyed Mike McCarthy, but that I didn't get is we're not really going to try to win, yet we're forcing all of our regulars into the game through the beginning of the 4th quarter. It seemed strange.
Well, unfortunately, with the opening number last week of 13.5 and the closing number of 14.5, I know it's football. I know it's any given Sunday. Jalen Hurts, A, was playing, and B, there was no way in holy hell the Eagles were going to lose.
Right.
Now, you got to say the right things publicly. You got to put the guys out there. You're playing at the same time. You just don't know. But as you could tell by the performance, it was a half-hearted effort. Dallas knew when they boarded the plane, there was no shot in hell that they were going to get the number 1 seed. And I just want to preface one thing for people watching and listening live right now. I'm going to go back to last year opening day. Dallas at Tampa. Tampa was 5.5-point favorites. Okay. I want to go to this year opening day. Tampa was 2-point favorites at Dallas. Always trust and respect the opening number. Dallas is 2.5-point favorites this week.
Very good. All right. That's a good tease for us to get to Thursday. We'll have a lot more for you on Thursday about all these games. Arizona was at San Francisco. There hasn't really been any news in Arizona other than lots of questions surrounding the willingness of the quarterback to play football. The head coach is now gone. The owner said in all seriousness that he'd never seen a coach or anyone else work as hard or as many hours as his head coach did in Arizona. And I'll buy that. Maybe he should have never got the job. He wasn't phenomenal in college. It was odd. It seemed to be a match that the ownership and the GM felt was perfect for the situation. So, okay. It just never worked. And now, in my eyes, Arizona, on a totally separate topic away from playoffs and handicapping, Arizona's in a tough spot because they owe this young kid $200 million. Little quarterbacks don't live in this league. He's at his best when he's running, yet he's already suffering injuries and having tissue injuries and everything else. That seems it will only get worse. And now the news is this coach is out, and whoever's coming, the quarterback's going to have a big say. If I was an Arizona fan, my stomach, the gas I would be emitting would be terrible. I would be very worried and upset, and my stomach would be gurgling.
I'll bring up fantasy football for a second. 2 years ago, he was a big part of my start of the year. They started out 7-8-0. They brought D-Hop over.
Oh, yeah.
Life was
like
great.
One of the 3 best teams in the league. Yeah, Kyler was playing great.
And then Kyler gets hurt. D-Hop gets hurt. Now, Miss Cliff there, Cliffy Clavin, I want to call him. He drafted Josh Rosen, I think. Yeah. And then all of a sudden Kyler's there. He's like, hey guys, let's get Kyler instead. So he put all his eggs in the Kyler basket. And as you said, he couldn't win in college. So if you can't win in college, listen, guys in college that win, try to come over here. They find out I can't win here and they go back to college. But if you can't win in college, hell, what the hell? You ain't going to win in the NFL. Now Kyler's got Call of Duty and he's got all these other problems, doesn't know the book or doesn't want to do his homework. J.J. Watt, great career. Thank you. Mm-hmm. D-Hop, a free agent. Sean Payton says it's an interesting job. He's just, that's all PR. He wants no one wants a part of that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'd like to see that contract because there's got to be a way somewhere, somehow, maybe not next year, but the year after, you take a big hit on the dead cap, salary cap, whatever you want to call it. This kid is not made. He'll be a good backup, but he the longevity factor. So I feel for whatever coach takes that job.
Yeah, if you take that job one is going to be helping this young man grow up, designing the best offense you can around him, and teaching him that everyone's not going to try and appease him all the time, that he's going to have to be more than Pebbles and Bam Pam playing video games and knowing he was too fast for most people to catch him. Otherwise, it's going to be a tragic career of what we watched here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as a supreme talent, a really supreme talent that was going to have a tough time in the NFL. And he has. The problem is a lot of it's self-inflicted. So the rest of that game was Arizona at San Francisco. San Francisco wins convincingly. They win their final 10 games. Since Christian McCaffrey became a 49er, they are 10-0. He's just worked in seamlessly as they've run a few different running backs in and out, take a little bit of a weight off of him. Debo hasn't even really played a lot in these 10 games, and yet they still look really like, other than the fact that they've got a kid no one knows, whose quarterback rating, by the way, was 107.3 in Purdy in the games that he played, they look like the best team. And I remember, 3 or 4 years ago when they took on the Chiefs in that Super Bowl, and if it wasn't for Mahomes and Hill coming up with a couple of magical plays, they won that game. And the only real thing that bit them was their quarterback, as handsome as he is and still was and whatever, wasn't quite good enough. And that cost them the Super Bowl, but they may be right back in the same spot. This game also affects these games also affect that Seattle ends up in because of getting help from their friends in Detroit. Green Bay is out. So Seattle will travel to San Francisco Saturday now, a bit of a shorter week at 3:30. Minus 9.5 is the line I saw when I looked at this morning. San Francisco. Give everybody an inkling of what you've got now, and obviously we'll know a lot more in the next 2 days. Seattle at San Fran.
My numbers were 10 with a 44. Currently at circa 42.5, 9.5. The first inclination Vegas is telling you is 27-17 with San Fran here. Again, the Brock Star, as I like to call him, Mr. Irrelevant, first NFL playoff. It's at home versus Geno. Hats off to Geno, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hell of a year. Geno, I mean, listen, I laughed when people drafted him. Like, Geno, is this Geno Capoletti? Geno,
right.
Papa Geno? Right. And had an amazing year. No one's given him a puncher's chance. I think they'll move the ball. Would I lay the 10, 9.5 right now? No, I wouldn't. That's too many points. But again, when the dust settles, I fully expect San Fran to be standing.
Gotcha. Chargers at Denver. The Chargers lose 31-28, but are finally in the playoffs. They finished 10-7, probably saved their head coach's job for the moment. I don't know. I think that young quarterback is really good. That offense was a little pop gunnish mostly because they had issues at wide receiver with keeping their wide receivers healthy, and they really didn't have a lot of over-the-top speed. But for him to throw 25 touchdowns and 10 picks and have a quarterback rating of 93, I didn't really realize that it was that average, and it kind of surprises me. And to be honest with you, I feel like the Chargers are dangerous in this game at Jacksonville.
When you have Mr. Eckler, who had 20 touchdowns last year, and I think he's got 17 this year, or might even have more, correct on the Keenan Allen, Big Mike situation. They never healthy. They finally got healthy, and Big Mike had back spasms, left the game, I think, in the second quarter. Yep. And Russell Wilson probably had his best game of the year late, and I think he had 3 or 4 touchdown passes there to save a little face. This number opened up a pick in the 46.5 at circa right now, 1-47.5. This is the coin flip of all coin flips.
Yep.
Again, this Charger team got, help my memory here, I think Jacksonville went into LA this year and absolutely boat raced them.
I looked at that. I'll look it up. You keep talking. I'll look it up.
So, listen, this Jacksonville team has come on like gangbusters. Zay Jones has had some big games. We know about ETN. Ingram at tight end's been a huge,
especially
factor.
Late. He's a big part of their momentum, even late. Totally agree.
I think what this game is going to come down to very simply is that cliche: who wins the turnover battles? And I think at this point, I would put my lean and edge on Justin Herbert and the Chargers here. Again, with a 47, I could see this 24-23 late field goal, 23-21 Jacksonville lead. And what is it? Dicker, I think his name is.
Dicker the kicker.
Dicker the kicker from about 43 for the win.
I'm with you, and I feel, as I sit here on Tuesday, without knowing anything, like the under is going to hit on this game. I think the Jaguars defense is playing better. The Chargers defense is playing better as well. Their exceptional players are on the field and healthy. It feels like an under to me. By the way, you were right, 38-10. The Jaguars ran the Chargers in early. It was September like 25th or something like that. So not sure that those two things have a lot in common other than that they have film. The Jaguars beat the Titans to get in 20-16 on a late defensive TD, sort of a, we can win in all manner.
And I'd like to reflect on that one because
sure, please.
We talk about the instant replay in the 3, 4, 5 minutes. Okay. I watched that live. I watched the replays they showed me. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've never seen a quicker return on such a big game changer than that. His arm was coming forward and it was, yes, pushed now, but the arm was coming forward. They came back in like 45 seconds, said touchdown. And I'm like, okay, I guess we know where we're leaning here, but it is what it is, and we'll see what happens on Saturday at 8:15.
Interesting thought, too. That was a very physical football game, and a young Jaguars team that hasn't been in this position. As I sit here Tuesday knowing nothing, I think the Jaguars are in trouble in this game. The Titans were very physical in that football game. That took everything out of them. It took a fortuitous bounce, as you said, a quickly judged whatever scoop and score to win the game. Derrick Henry ended up with 130 yards. He carried the ball 30 some times. That will wear on you. You knew the Titans and that coach would have them physically ready. I have a feeling that game took a lot out of the Jaguars. And now here come the Chargers. And if they're loaded on offense and ready to go, my feeling as I sit here is, without saying anything else other than I think the Jaguars are in trouble even at home in that game. Chiefs at the Raiders. Did I miss one? No, I didn't. Okay, so the Chiefs played the Raiders. All kinds of stories here. Derek Carr is not in. Jared Stidham. Oh, maybe this is the next guy in Stidham we trust, et cetera, et cetera. Devontae Adams being gracious enough to say, I'll keep my $180 million and I'm going to stay here for the Raiders. That's good. KC secures home field. All of it is a little bit awkward. Them getting home field makes Kansas City people happy. It makes me happy. I don't like the way it happened. Those top three teams in the AFC are all brilliant, and I can't wait to see them play. And I wish everyone else would just get the fuck out of the way, and those two would play some sort of roundhouse here, and let's let the one who can stand up go to the Super Bowl. But they end up with a number one seed. Carr is gone. Stidham is not the answer. I don't know what the Raiders are going to do, but Mahomes secures MVP with a tidy game where he throws a touchdown and 200 yards. And it's a 5,200-yard season, 41 touchdown, 12 picks, and the Chiefs win 14 in a year when many people thought they would take a step back. And I think you do have to give the Chiefs credit for having the guts to trade Tyreek Hill. Now, if not the most dynamic player in the NFL, certainly one of the top two or three. Game-changing, and a guy that in many times the last 4 years saved the Chiefs, right? Saved them with just beep, beep, I'm gone. His ability is uncanny. His speed is – I like almost everything about him, except maybe the way he treats people. And they took the chance to trade him and end up sort of doing a rebuild. And Mahomes takes them through it. And they did a mini rebuild here in the secondary and on the offensive line. And here they are again with 14 wins.
I am just from the eye test, and I'll go back to the playoffs last year. I'll go back to the last 8 games, and I'll get laughed at, chastised. Your MVP in my eyes is Jerick McKinnon. It's just his pass catching
there's no way I could disagree with that. Yeah.
And it's as much as Juju was supposed to be Pat's safety valve, it's McKinnon. Now, Pacheco's come in. He's filled the void. Nothing around. Ronald Jones even scored last week. It's almost like plug and play. I'll go back to 2 decades of Tom Brady. It's the system and Tom. It doesn't matter what he has out there for weapons. He's going to find you. Just get in the right area. It's the same with Pat. The only difference is Pat can scramble and then he can flick it. That touchdown as he's running on the outside, like he's going to run it in. And then next thing you know, he just does one of these, it's just, he's amazing. He's amazing. But I tell you what, again, 4th and 1, you got Tyreek in that little touch pass, and he's going to zing around. You don't have Tyreek, so Is he going to trust MVS? Is he going to trust someone else?
Yeah, there are questions about Kansas City because they end up one of the worst teams in the NFL now, 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2, to where 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1 and 4th and 2 was. Doesn't matter whether they're in zone or man. We'll move Tyreek around. We'll run him back and forth, and we'll run a little Y option route where he goes this way, then he goes this way. Not a damn thing anybody can do about it, whether they're in zone or they're in man. There's nothing you can do unless Mahomes throws the ball on the ground, and he just never seems to do that in a big moment. So that was a safety valve, and that was something specifically I worried about in the offseason. I kept thinking, this team gets to 3rd and short or 4th and short, and I don't even know what the conversion rate in the last 3 years, but it seems 95%. And most of the time, it went through 15 and 10. So there are certainly questions about the Chiefs. There definitely are. I mean, Kelsey's his go-to, and who else do you really believe that he trusts all the time? They need Hardman back, and I'm not sure there's any indications he'll be back necessarily or not. So The Giants played at the Eagles, and this was a big deal because the Eagles were clinching the number 1 seed. The Giants did not play a lot of people. I wondered about that. I wondered right up to 2 hours before the game, might the Giants flip and feel like their history says, you know what? Go win this damn game. Roll into the playoffs with a head of steam. Beat this Eagles team. But as it lines up now, if they win in week number 1 of the or Super whatever the hell it's called against Minnesota, they'll end up playing the Eagles again. So I respect what they did, and Barkley probably needed the rest, so they probably made the right decision. They hung around in that game a little bit. The Eagles clinched number 1 over the Giants. Hurts. They certainly needed that because Hurts did not look healthy. Let's put it that way. Comfortable, healthy. He didn't look anything like he had looked before. Still the same amount of guile, but not as effective running, not as effective passing. He looked like a man who hadn't played in a while and who also had still some aches and pains.
Yeah, no doubt. And we had Dan Alexander on Thursday afternoon from Philly, call it the Philly special, and talked about the fact that there'll be no him lining up behind the center and 2 guys behind him ready to push him, forward for that 1 yard or the touchdown. How many times did he fake to Miles Sanders or Kenneth Gainwell, pull the ball back and just run? So how much was that affected to say, hey, guys, let's just get in. Let's get the win. Give me 2 more weeks off. I'll be fine. When you have A.J. Brown, no one's talking. And listen, I love A.J. Brown. Don't get me wrong, but the Devontae Smith is just coming into form, into his own. Add Goddard, whatever you want to call him, streaking down the sides, the seams there. They're going to be a real tough out. They needed to buy more than anyone. They are so banged up right now. Listen, they'll be standing. Someone will be going to Philly to win the NFC Championship.
Look through these games that we just did. I'll give the listeners and the viewers, and I appreciate everybody tuning in on this Tuesday night. Tua's guaranteed number is roughly $31 million. So for those of us saying you can't make him give up his life isn't going to be football. It doesn't have to be. He's a wonderful young man who's going to get married and have kids and do so much. And if he quits tomorrow to take care of his health and live his life, he's got $31 million guaranteed, and no one is going to say a thing. No one is going to say a thing. What's the other contract you want me to look at? And what I want you to do while I'm doing this, because this is live, is look at the games we just went through and just go ahead and peruse this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday games, and tell me who does have momentum. I think I talked about so many teams that really wanted to get healthy and get some momentum going into the playoffs, and I'm not sure I see hardly any of even the top teams. So maybe Cincinnati. Who else? You do that. What was the other contract you wanted me to look up?
I'm rattling my brain.
Right? It was the Arizona quarterback.
Oh, Kyler Murray. Correct.
Yeah. So I'll look that up.
Just going top to bottom, Seattle, San Francisco, again, the 10 with a 9.5. I think 27-17 all day. I think Vegas is spot on there. We talked about the Chargers and the Jaguars open to pick, now 1.5. Again, if you like the Chargers on the revenge game, which, as Brady said, was early in September, just take them on the money line, minus 115, 118. If you want to sit and wait and grab the Jaguars, maybe it gets up to 1.5, 2 with a 47. Maybe this is the 24-23 and both sides win money line and the Jaguars plus the points there. Miami and Buffalo, again, it went from 10 to 9.5 to 9. I don't think Tua is playing. I don't know who's QB. And I do know it looks like Mozart is out there. Buffalo wins. Maybe Miami's down 14-15 and get a late score for a backdoor. But it's tough to bet a game. It used to be pick the winner. If you could pick the winner, then you usually covered the spread around 63% of the time. The game has changed. Giants, Vikings, I will just tell you the whole world's on the Giants. Everyone knows, quote unquote, the Vikings are the frauds. Let that line get to 2.5, 2. I would think Minnesota on a money line play there. But again, what really sticks out again is the 48 total. Right now, I would say this is an overall day. That number looks crazy. The Cincinnati Ravens game is the one that smells the most to me.
Yep.
Is the one because Cincinnati was just 9, 10, 11-point favorites, boat raced them. That number is telling me I think Lamar's playing. Now, again, he has not practiced since December 4th. Keep an eye, obviously, on the practice, number one. Number two, keep an eye on that line. If that thing starts streaking to 6.5, 6, 5.5, Lamar's definitely playing. And last but not least, again, Dallas, Tampa. I gave you guys exactly what I thought. I'll say it again one more time.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, opening day, Dallas at Tampa. Tampa 5-point favorites. Tampa wins. This year, opening day, Tampa in Dallas. Tampa -2. Tampa wins. Dallas opens up 2.5 on Monday, guys. Wink, wink.
More on Thursday. Kyler Murray's guaranteed number is 160 million. There's really nothing Arizona can do about this until after 26. He'll make $37 million in 2025. This one's a problem. They really have to do what they're going to do, and that is settle in, try and find a coach that everybody agrees can design an offense that fits this young man, and get someone who can grab him by the scruff of the neck. It's going to be a hard thing because Kyler's going to want a buddy or someone who he thinks really gets him. But what he needs is Jimmy Johnson or someone who will grab him by the back of the neck and bang his head on the table if they need to and say, you have a chance to have a brilliant career and to win a Super Bowl and to be, the smallest, fastest, coolest quarterback this league has ever seen success-wise. Or you can just be a dick and you'll take $160 million guaranteed from Arizona and disappear like a fart in the wind. And it's going to be too bad. And you're going to be sitting at home playing video games when you're 30 and wonder why no one's calling. And that may be extreme, but that is the way I feel. And it's sitting in front of him. And I know he's probably got great parents, somebody who he listens to, a mentor or somebody is going to have to be brought in there. And maybe it's a quarterback coach who has that effect on him, with a really the supreme head coach who can draw up the right offense and get him on the edges, because that's where he's not going to need to live.
You were talking about Jimmy Johnson and the absolute and listen, we didn't talk about this, and congratulations to Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Another year where everyone counted him out. No, he didn't make the playoffs, guys. Okay. He was within a whisker of making the playoffs. Okay. But again, 9-8, he's never had a losing year. And listen, this team is only going to get better. Pickett to Pickens. Najee Harris playing possessed the last few weeks.
Yep.
And that's the coach right there that needs that little engine that could and grab him right by the back of his ear. It's like, kid, sit your ass down right here. And this is how it's done.
And as much as I MF'd him when we started, maybe it's Kirby Smart. Maybe it's Kirby Smart. Maybe, again, it's another college coach, and that stuff doesn't always work. I've been just absolutely mesmerized by how good a coach I think he is. And it would be similar to a Jimmy Johnson situation where Kirby comes in and he knows exactly who he wants to draft for the next 2 or 3 years, right? He's seen all of them in the SEC. It was what Jimmy did. And then pulled a brilliant Rule 5 trade with Herschel Walker, where he ended up with so many picks you could put them in a school bus, and he made the most out of them. And all of a sudden, not only do they have a great team, they had depth out the ass and in an unsalary cap situation until their last Super Bowl. So it all worked perfect. But I could see, a similar scenario right there where Kirby Smart fits in here. And Kirby probably would not be afraid at all to throw a quick rabbit punch in Kyler's nose either and tell him to shut the fuck up. So maybe that's necessary.
Well, I can tell you this right now. If Kirby Smart was ever to leave Georgia for the NFL,
he ain't going to Arizona.
He ought to, he doesn't have to do anything for the next 10 years. I mean, he idols Nick Saban. He made a statement and they talked about it. The football, the NCAAs, the SEC runs through Georgia, the hell with Alabama. But I got your college coach. Rumors.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Harbaugh. He said he's taking offers. So there's your college coach if you wanted. And I'm not saying that he's that Kirby Smart disciplinary or a Mike Tomlin, but he has experience. He's rumored to be taking offers. Maybe Harbaugh wants a little warmer weather.
Maybe. Seems just like more of a defensive mind. So then you need to tell me who the coordinator is going to be and how they're going to make this kid happy. Interesting. I hope it works out. I really do. I hope it works out for him. I like all these young, unbelievably talented players to be good. The league is more fun when they are. I want them healthy. I want them good. I want them standing up and playing each other. Interesting note too before we go. a lot of these games look like they're going to end up with division rivals playing each other either in the first round or certainly in the second round. It looks very much like if the Giants win, they'll head to Philadelphia. If the Chargers win, they will most likely head to Kansas City. And a lot of that is going to happen where you end up now with teams playing for the third time. And really, tell me, but guys like you, it's much tougher when teams are playing for the third time, isn't it, to pick out the nuance that gives you what is an edge in a game when teams are playing for the third time in a year?
It used to be the golden rule. I mean, you know how hard it is to beat a team twice, never mind three times.
Right.
Now, take the Buffalo Bills, who they actually lost to the Patriots in that windstorm last year when the Patriots ran it three times on Monday. They came to New England the last game of the year. They didn't punt. Then the Patriots went to Buffalo, and again, Buffalo didn't punt. But you, as a Chiefs fan,
yep,
the one guy you don't want to see, other than Joe Burrow, of course, is the kid called Justin Herbert, who's been knocking on your damn door. How many damn times there? I don't know if you want to see him.
You're right. You're absolutely right. The only good news for Kansas City fans is the Chargers coach comes with that team, and they had us beat 2 or 3 times in the last 3 years, and he manages to overmanage, if you will, right? Going for fourth down so many times that they took themselves right out of easy points and lost games by 1, 2, and 3 points when they probably shouldn't have. So you're right. Chiefs fans have a eerie feeling about playing certainly Buffalo and Cincinnati, but also the Chargers as well. I totally agree with you. If the Chiefs win this Super Bowl, they will absolutely have done something amazing, and Mahomes will be the reason. I think we agree. Mahomes and Andy will be the reason for all of it.
Yeah, on my show this morning, they were talking a look-ahead line. You can grab the AFC, I think, around minus 130 right now on the money line to win the Super Bowl. So if you're assuming it's going to be Pat, if it's going to be Joe, or if it's going to be Josh, you're going to get them basically at a minus 1, 1.5, maybe even a 2. So that tells me what? Is it Philly? Is it San Fran? Or does someone come out of the pack there? But I would take my shot at basically a minus 130, a pick'em type with one of those 3 quarterbacks from one of those teams in Arizona in the warm weather against whoever's standing in the NFC.
So Saturday, Seahawks and 49ers, Chargers and Jaguars. Sunday, Dolphins at the Bills, Giants at the Vikings, Ravens at the Bengals, Cowboys at the Buccaneers is on Monday. So terrific, whatever they're calling it. Super wild card weekend is going to be something to look forward to. We'll be back with you Thursday evening. We will find out who practiced on Wednesday, who practiced on Thursday. We'll find out who the quarterbacks are going to be of those teams, because they will be in practice or they will not be playing. Lots more for you. Jeffrey, I enjoyed it very much. We'll ask Dave Sharapin hopefully to be here with us Thursday night and get his wonderful insight, as we've missed him terribly, and hopefully he'll be back with us for that as well. For Sportsbook Confessions and this Tuesday of Reflections, I'm Brady Tinker for Jeff Dawson. Thanks for watching. See you Thursday night. It's going to be a great Super Bowl, whatever wild card weekend.